So today we're going to be talking about why we get sick when we live with narcissists. Today we're going to be talking about the function of our perception of the world and how our reticular activating system, this is the area of the brain that is responsible for our behavior and basically how we see the world. We're going to be talking about our perception of the world and how that can make us sick and how it can also make us well. So when we're talking about living with a narcissist, we're talking about living in a chronic state of stress. It means that your fight or flight system is always on high alert. It means that you are marinating in cortisol. It means that the way you view the world is very narrow, and that is what stress does to us. When we live in painful situations, our ability to see the world in a big way is narrowed, and it makes sense. When you are under stress, what your brain wants to do is to have you focus on what it believes based on the data and information that has been stored in the subconscious mind, as well as what you're experiencing now. The brain wants you to focus on what it thinks is causing you stress. This is trouble. Because if we live with a narcissist, we think that our trouble is outside of us. And so what do? We don't take care of the selves. We don't question our thoughts. We focus on the narcissist in our lives. What do we focus on? We focus on the way that they move. We focus on their tone. We focus on the things that they say. We focus on how they treat us. We focus on their crazy-making communication, their circular conversations, their justifications. We are trying to keep up with the madness and the chaos of a narcissistic mind. A narcissist is not unlike everyone in that the mind is built to avoid the shame and the pain that we have on the inside. Most people are running from themselves. Most people are engaging in one form of escapism or another. A codependent runs from their shame by focusing on other people, by remaining busy, by being hypervigilant, by believing the stories that are really all about the past. In other words, when you are codependent, you're not living in the now. You're not creating your future consciously. You are literally stuck in the past. It is your trauma and your trauma story that has been solidified, well, it seems solidified at the level of the subconscious. You are operating your life based on certain beliefs that you were downloaded to believe due to childhood trauma, due to being unable to please your parents, or being taught that you please your parents when you appease them, when you take care of them, when you agree with them, when you allow them to interfere with your life, when you allow their sadness to interfere with you and how you feel about yourself. When you are codependent, your inner child is running your life. You think the big you, the adult you, is having the relationship with the narcissist, but all too often it's our inner child that is interfacing with the narcissist. We feel like children. We feel powerless. We feel like a victim of the narcissist in our life. We feel like we are powerless to this authority. We give the narcissist in our life all the authority over our focus, over what we think, and over what we feel. We are walking around on eggshells. We lose our sense of balance. We don't know that we're living in the past, meaning that if you were taught that the best way to get through life is to shut up, the best way to get through life is to not speak up, the best way to get through life is to figure out how to please people, to have no needs. If you are afraid of being a burden, if you don't speak up for yourself, if you don't self-advocate, if you don't put yourself first, because as a child, it never worked for you. When you tried to speak up, you were taught that that resulted in pain. And so at a very subconscious level, when we're talking about the mind, your mind is just trying to keep you safe. When you engage with the narcissist and you don't push, or you realize that it's better to just let things simmer down for a while. You're caught in the toxic cycle where stress is building, there's an incident, then things start to calm down, there's a makeup period, and before you know it, you're mounting stress again. It's a very push-pull type of toxic dynamic. And this makes us sick, but we never realize it because we don't recognize that our cortisol is through the roof, that our immune system is compromised, and that our focus on the narcissist is what continues to keep us in this fight or flight response. When we are stuck in narcissistic relationships, literally the reticular activating system of the brain narrows, or I should say that it is just wired to focus more on what we believe the source of our pain is. That's why we can be in narcissistic relationships and not be able to think straight, not be able to care for our children properly. I've had so many clients tell me that my children wanted me to leave this relationship dynamic. I just couldn't. Not your fault. Your brain is literally acting and behaving the way it was designed to behave. But the problem is that you're not conscious. You're not as aware as you think you are. And to get there, you need tools. Because I've heard people say, like, just change your focus. And there's a lot of shaming, I think, in the self-help community. I mean, I'm 58. So when I first started on my self-help journey, I was listening to the likes of Louise Hay and the Wayne Dyers and the Esther Hicks of the world and the Jack Canfields of the world. And I was hearing a lot about, well, it's your fault if you have a negative thought, or it's your fault if you don't think that you can get ahead in life. No, it's not. It is not my fault. My brain is wired to think a certain way. My brain is wired to focus on the negative because what I think is going to happen, at least at the level of the brain, we're just trying to be safe. And so if I think there are saber-toothed tigers in my backyard, that's what I focus on so that I can survive them, so I am not caught off guard. And so when you live with a narcissist, when you live with someone who is intentionally gaslighting you, or who doesn't care what you think, or who is so below the veil themselves that their ego has them behaving as if they must make you wrong because they need to be right, they are also living in the past, acting out their trauma, or I should say the effects of trauma. Because is it what happened to us, or is it the scars left over? The language patterns that are subconscious, the behavior patterns that are subconscious, the relationship patterns that are subconscious, these ego defense mechanisms that just spit out of our mouths without us even thinking about it. So a narcissist is living in the past too. They're not living in the creative mind. They're abusing people. They're taking advantage of people. And for anybody who has a difficult time with those concepts, when you think about human beings, we need one another. You think about hunters and gatherers. They supported one another. We knew that we needed one another when we were hunters and gatherers. So community was very important. Conflict would or could mean death. And so we are built to socialize. We are built to have empathy for one another. When it comes to a narcissist, when their ability to have empathy is impaired, that's when our sense of community gets rocked. That's when we have codependency, when we have childhood trauma, we don't even realize that we are in a toxic dynamic. It is so natural for us to walk around on eggshells. Those of us who are adult children of alcoholics, those of us who grew up with narcissistic parents, it is our norm to guess at what normal is. It is our norm to question ourselves. It is our norm to deal with unpredictability. It is our norm to believe that it's our job to figure out what other people think, what other people need, and become what we think other people need. This is so our norm to abandon the self. And this is why we get sick. Because when we're in codependent narcissistic relationships, we're not focusing on the self. We're not eating well. We're not meditating. We're not regulating our emotions. We are reacting to the chaos of the narcissist. We are literally focused on the narcissist. And without power and control outside of us, there is no power and control inside of us. And although everything that we need is within us, and if we look within and we bring it forward, we can heal our lives. So to heal from codependency and to end relationships with narcissists, we have to recognize the signs. And unfortunately, for so many of us, and that's why I love being in this field, because I feel like my purpose is to help people awaken to the truth, that we don't know that we're asleep. I know that for me, that was my storyline. I was a mom. I had 3 children. I was in a very unhappy marriage. I was very unhappy. I was depressed. I had codependency. I was doing everything wrong. I had a business. I had a beautiful home, but everything felt a mess inside. But I didn't know how to accept that. I didn't know how to surrender to that. That was the hardest part, was accepting I'm really miserable. Instead of judging myself and just allowing myself to accept I'm really miserable right now. That was the hardest part. It's super hard to be that authentic. It's so difficult to be that honest with yourself and to learn to radically accept and radically surrender to the fact that you are unhappy, that you are suffering. Because when you're living with the narcissist minimizes you. They marginalize you. You got nothing to be unhappy for. Look how you live. Look how Susie lives compared to how you live. I only cheated on you 4 times. Mary down the block, her husband left with the mistress. You're lucky I'm still here, right? That's how narcissists talk to you. Look how good you have it. What are they doing? They're minimizing your experiences. In my case, it was a double whammy, in my opinion, because when I tried to explain to my parents how unhappy I was, they told me I had no right to feel that way. And so when your own parents are telling you you're selfish, you're a drama queen, you're never happy, that's why you're unhappy, how is it that you as a human being find the courage and the ability to say, I'm unhappy, without recoiling from feeling bad that you feel that way? And that is really how we break through codependency. That is how we end narcissistic relationships. That is how we live a self-empowered life. It's us closing our eyes to the outside world. It's us looking within and us saying, what is my truth? Despite what other people think, what is my truth? In my case, I was near death. The doctor told me if I closed my eyes and fell asleep, my asthma was so bad I wouldn't wake up. That scared me. And when you come to that point in your life where you think, I don't have many days left, trust me when I tell you that is a wake-up call. And that changed my life. That was one of the moments that changed my life, where I realized, am I going to spend the rest of my life living for others, trying to gain their approval, in running from how I truly feel, running from my truth, running from what does my truth mean? My truth means that I have to let go of their perceptions of me. I have to let go of the narcissist telling people that I'm selfish, that I just wanted to get a divorce. Yeah, I don't know any woman who has 3 kids that just wakes up and decides, I don't want to be married anymore. But that was his narrative. I had to accept that that was his narrative. I had to accept the smear campaigns. I had to accept the half-truths. I had to accept that people were going to talk about me. Oh my God, are you kidding me? That is like death to someone who's codependent, who's been programmed to believe, no, it's your job to convince people that you are worthy. Oh no, you're on the hook forever, sweetie pie. You're the fish and I'm the hook. And you wiggle when I pull. You jump when I say jump. You worry every day of your life what I think about you. And you spend every day of your life toiling, trying to figure out how to make me happy and how to avoid people from talking about you. So that was my life. And when I was presented with this idea that your days are almost over, I got really serious about that challenge. And that's when the love of my children overrode the fear of what other people thought about me. And if it wasn't for my kids, I'm not sure I would have been able to have the courage. And that's spoken like a true codependent, right? Because what I couldn't do for me, I did for them. But it all worked out in the end because I learned that lesson, that I am not a good role model for my children unless I can self-advocate, unless I can have the courage to walk away, unless I can have the courage to say, I'm not happy, even if you think I'm crazy, I'm allowed to accept that I'm not happy. That truth, when you line up with that truth, the universe supports you. When you line up with that truth, you are set free. Now, I'm not saying that when you line up with that truth, suddenly things get easy. In fact, the opposite is true. When you line up with the truth, oftentimes that's when people bark. That's when people bite. That's when people try to hurt you, because you're breaking the paradigm. You're breaking the mold. You're saying, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to be part of this family dynamic. I don't want to be a part of this toxic family. I love you. I tried to convince you that I was worthy of love. I've spent my entire life running out this inner child narrative. Please love me. Please see me. Please hear me. Please take care of me. I'm done. I'm done. I'm going to start taking care of me. And that's why I titled my first book, The Road Back to Me, because that is the journey, learning to look within. If you're not looking within, then you're looking outside of yourself for peace, and you can't find it there. You are enough. You're enough. The greater is he or she and it that lives within you than he, she, or it that lives outside the world. And that's the truth. You are enough. But we are conditioned to believe that we're not enough. Only when you change your mind, only when you change your perception of the world, only when you change your perception of self, does your view open. And that's the thing. When you're living with the narcissist, they narrow your view. Look at me, worry about me, don't think about them, think about me, think about what I think about you. Literally, your brain, your reticular activating system, and if you don't believe me, look it up. The reticular activating system is designed to put blinders on you. And that is why when you start doing recovery work and you start looking within, narcissists in your life are very unhappy. People judge you. They judge everything that comes out of your mouth. Or I should say, the people that you should walk away from, the people that do not serve you, the people that were part of that bondage system, the people that want you to be worried about what they think about you, they start to get riled up. Now, as long as you do what they want you to do, they stay calm. But it's so true. When you start loving yourself, when you start taking care of yourself, the people that should not be in your life, they start to get really ticked off. And I'm here to tell you that it is scary. And it does feel like suffering, because it is. And you're not playing the victim when you say, this hurts me. So that's where I think the self-help community hurts us, when they shame the victims of narcissism. The people who are taken advantage of by narcissists. When we tell people that negative emotion is bad, no, negative emotion is not bad. Negative emotion is my truth. My wounds are my truth. My suffering is my truth. Now, do we want to stay in suffering? No, but we certainly don't want to shame ourselves for it. We certainly don't want to say it's not real. We certainly don't want to look to an authority figure and ask them for permission to feel what we feel. That's what I did. Every time I went to my ex-husband and said I was unhappy, I didn't realize it, but I was coming to him like a 3-year-old little girl saying, Daddy, do I have permission to feel this? Just like I did when I was 7, and I sat on my father's lap and I said, I don't think Mommy loves me. And he shushed my hand. He said, don't ever say that again. Your mother worked so hard for you. And I remember trying not to blink because the tears were so big in my eyes. When I think about the courage it took for that 7-year-old little girl inside of her to admit that she didn't think her mother loved her to her father. The courage I had at 7 years old, it just blows me away. I was looking for help, please validate me, and he invalidated me. And that set me up to invalidating myself for the rest of my life and feeling at a subconscious level so wounded by that. And that's what trauma is. That's how trauma shows up in your life. So there's the event, but then there's this aftershock. There's this reverberation that happens where we are living out that trauma or the consequence of that trauma for a lifetime. We can literally go to our husbands and our wives and our siblings, our mothers and fathers, and talk to them and not even know that at a subconscious level, we're looking for permission and approval and validation to feel those feelings. And that has to stop. So we get sick because we're not honoring our truth. And I can tell you that it is a miracle, as hokey pokey as this sounds, where when you accept your suffering, where you say, this does suck, my life is difficult, I am unhappy, I'm terrified because I have children and he's going to take advantage of me financially. He might, or she might. It might absolutely happen. But when you walk through it all, when you say, yup, this is what happens. Time and time again, I coach someone and I say to them, this is predictable. I want you to accept it. I don't want you to fight it. I don't want you to live in fear of it. I want you to surrender to the suffering of it. This is suffering. I want you to surrender to the fact that this is narcissistic behavior. This is predictable. This is scary. And that's where we develop self-esteem, and that's where we develop courage. It's by looking at the challenge head on. It's not by avoiding the challenge. It's by saying, this absolutely is a challenge and I'm going to face it head on anyway. So what I hope you hear me saying is that this is suffering. If you've been involved with a narcissist, you are suffering, and that's okay. It's time to stop judging yourself because it is hard. It's time to stop shaming yourself. It's time to stop looking for validation from other people. It's time to really say, this is how I feel. Because the first step to recovery, emotional recovery, the first step to an inner transformation is accepting exactly where you were. I wouldn't be where I am today until I finally accepted how bad it was yesterday or 20 or 25 years ago. And that really is the journey. We have to understand that this is a journey. And you want to encourage yourself, because knowing that you're in pain is further along the path than being so below the veil that you don't recognize that you're in pain. So try to get in the habit of telling yourself that every day I get a little bit better. Every day I get a little bit better at telling my truth and feeling my feelings. And tomorrow will be better than today. Try to get in the habit of looking at how far you've come, because the reticular articulating system, it can be wicked, because the mind defaults to fear. And when we are in fear, then our brain gets so highly activated at the level of the subconscious that all we notice are things that might make us afraid. So if we're having trouble paying our bills, all we see is lack. If we're worried about what people think about us, all we see are negative comments on Facebook. If we are worried about our ex smearing our name, all we hear are negative things that people say about us. And even in our own mind, then our self-talk becomes negative. And we really need to stop the process. And that's why I feel the first step is through surrender and by having compassion for our suffering. And compassion can take you a very long way as you heal from this type of relationship. As you heal, as you accept your truth, cortisol starts to lower. As you heal, you begin to transform your immune system. You no longer feel under attack. You're always going to feel more under attack when you're focusing on things that you can't control. So living with someone who's highly narcissistic will absolutely make you sick. And this is why. Because you are in fear and your brain thinks it should be paying attention to the narcissist. And what makes us sick is our perception of the world. What makes us sick is our perception of our situation. What makes us sick is our perception of the narcissist in our life. When we go from focusing on what we can't control to focusing on what we can control, that's a game changer. So if you're stuck in codependency, I want you to know about the 12-week breakthrough coaching program. So this is my signature flagship coaching program. I'm very proud of it. It has just been recently endorsed by psychologist Robin Bryman. And she's endorsed the program by saying that her patients report that they have higher self-confidence, they're able to emotionally regulate at a much greater rate, and they have a greater sense of confidence when they come out of my coaching program. So if you lack a sense of self, if you are tired of feeling stuck, if you are at a point in your life where you're realizing that this is more than just the person that you're living with, this has something to do that's going on with you that's much deeper, I highly encourage you to check out the 12-week breakthrough coaching program. It is an honor to be your guide, and it is an honor to offer this to the wounded adult children of the world who need help learning how to find the road back to the divine, authentic self. Namaste, everybody. Until next time, as I bow to the love and light that is absolutely in you. And remember, even in your darkest moments, there's a light that is burning within you. And the reticular articulating system may have you focusing on the dark, but I'm here to tell you, with a little bit of practice, with a little bit of a mindset shift, you can begin to align with the light that's within you. Hey, if you love this content, don't forget to check out the next video, and you can go to my website and take the codependency quiz.